Welcome back to Blackthornprod. After waking up from a rather lengthy slumber, I returned to the pieces of the unfinished Dashing Fire jigsaw puzzle. It can be quite tricky getting back into an unfinished project after a long pause. It's full of bugs and messy pieces and problems to be solved. My momentum had reached an all-time low of 0. The challenge was to ignite the engine again and just cross that finish line. Working on important things like game balancing or completing the final boss or areas felt quite daunting at first. So I just started with something nice and easy to build up energy and momentum again, and that was improve the visuals. I added more texture and life to the backgrounds of the various areas with abstract planet shapes, and in front of the planets I added simple transparent clouds. At first I was afraid this extra detail would distract the player or make the game more confusing, but in fact I think this simply makes the Dashing Fire universe look more interesting. Doing so for every level from Tenebrous Sky to Lush Lands to the Merchant World took quite some time, but I'm very happy with the overall look. Even the 10 unique bosses had a visual overhaul. I then added some small, easy to implement details like adding an exit sign to the Merchant World so it's clear where the player needs to go once he's finished purchasing upgrades for his character, or a simple rules update for Tenebrous Sky explaining the new blue enemy mechanic. Then I balanced some of the gameplay, making certain enemies or mini planets easier to tackle or maneuver around. The spiky pop-up enemy were given a more telling warning sign with this bright red flashing highlight. And then some time was dedicated to the game's endless mode, where the player faces a continuous onslaught of vicious planets and enemies. Before, the endless mode was at a constant, non-changing difficulty level, but now the challenge increases over time, with harder planets to overcome and more shadows spawning from the left and right with every passing 25 to 30 seconds. There's also new planet types to keep the endless mode fresh and interesting. And of course I added a little high score functionality with Unity's player prefs. I'm still considering adding a boss rush mode to the game, although that's still very early in the works. The benefits would be to let players practice against bosses already encountered but which are hard to defeat, as well as let expert players test their skills by beating all bosses in one shot with no character upgrades and only a handful of health points. Next up I worked on the game's story, changing it from a simple intro cutscene into a sort of level with writing appearing on the screen at various intervals. This lets the player immediately test their character's movement and just looks and feels more interesting in my opinion. A lot of art was made to tell Dashing Fire's story, each piece painted in Photoshop, sometimes animated in Unity, always trying to keep that consistent, vibrant and fiery art style that's key to the experience I think. I really enjoy making the weird, twirly patterns found in planets and in backgrounds. Between work on Dashing Fire, my brother and I have been making our 4th game creation UDEMY course. This one is on a very classic topic, how to make an entire 2D platformer. And I guess it's time to put on my business hat and remind game creators out there that if you want to learn the basics of this incredible craft, then the 3 available courses can be bought with the links in the description. There's one on making an action game, another on the basics of Unity and C#, and then a turn-by-turn strategy course. In preparation to put the game on Steam, I dreamed up some cool achievements such as finishing the game without taking damage, reaching 200 seconds in endless mode, or not purchasing any character upgrades from the merchants. These still need to be extensively playtested and implemented, but the art and ideas have been mostly laid out. I also made a little credit scene, still a work in progress. I reuse a lot of sprites such as the clouds and background patterns and movement spots, but then there's tons I make from scratch, such as the grassy planets and words. In case you don't know, all art is made with Photoshop and an Intuos Pro medium drawing tablet, which I've had for more than 4 years, and it still works wonders. Lastly, Dave Allen, friend and talented music composer, has been making some great soundtracks. He did wonderful work on The Dreadful Whispers, which was my previous big game project, And he's delivering yet again. This is more work in progress, but he's created a soundtrack for Fields of Gold, Lushlands and Tenebrous Sky. We'll need to work on boss tracks and smaller story soundtracks, but all in due course. So to recap, I can say that Dashing Fire is getting close to the finish line, bit by bit. There's still a lot to be done, especially on the bug fixing departments, and on finishing music, achievements, and the potential boss rush modes. I also want to add secret bonus levels and bosses, not loads, but a few for persevering and curious players. And I think visuals can still be polished up a bit. For example, the player character can do with some extra love, I feel. But then the way is clear, and I'll be able to proudly say I finished what I started despite a tough motivation curve. With that said, wish me strength, it's always welcome, and I'm more than happy to hear your thoughts about the project in the comments. I really hope this little game will get some of you excited to continue work on your own, or even start a brand new one, and offer some fun times ahead. And I'll see you soon. I'm planning on doing a devlog update every 2 weeks up until launch, so stay tuned. Cheers!